Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another literature review, and it's another short story. Unlike the last ones, this one is not a Lovecraft one, but it is one that is inspired by Lovecraft. It is, of course, from Stephen King's literary works. It is Jerusalem's Lot, taken from his collection, Night Shift. Now, it's been a while since I've read Jerusalem's Lot, probably several years. And having read Lovecraft stuff a little bit, I can definitely see the Lovecraftian influence here, just like after reading some of Lovecraft's work, I can definitely see it more in Stephen King's It. Now, this story mostly takes influence from Lovecraft's story, The Rats in the Walls. Because if you look at both stories, it's the same basic story, it's just the plot is different. It involves a man coming to his ancestral home, noting that there's something weird going on with the house, and he eventually finds out the secret involving it. Of course, the main differences would be where they both involve the secret actually being in the house. But the difference is, whereas with the Rats in the Wall, the secret is all about the house, whereas in Jerusalem's Lot, one of the secrets is in the house and the other one is in the town of Jerusalem's Lot, which, of course, many King fans will know is the setting of King's second published book, Salem's Lot. He originally wanted to call it Jerusalem's Lot, but they had him drop it down to Salem, the nickname for the town in the book, to kind of get rid of a religious reference, I guess. I think it's a little bit more fitting that they call the short story that, because it is tied a little bit more in with religion due to the Lovecraft influence, mainly due to it having a little reference to the Necronomicon in a book called the Book of the Worm, which basically is the Necronomicon and everything but name. Which I'll get to that in just a little bit. Now, like I said, the same basic story as Rats in the Wall, but the plot portion of it is that we have Charles Boone. He's a gentleman moving into his ancestral home in 1850. It is told, like a lot of Lovecraft's works, in written form, with the narrator writing out his story. In this one, it's mainly through the form of letters that Charles is writing to a friend he calls Bones. And since I grew up in the 90s, even though I haven't watched a lot of it, I am aware of Star Trek, and I know that one of the characters on that show is called Bones, so I can't help but think of that. Makes me wonder, is the character that he's writing to a doctor as well? Because that's what they call Bones, if I remember right. Now, he's telling him all that's happening about the house, how the townspeople, they seem receptive at first. You can tell there's a little coldness there, and he finds out it has to do with the fight that happened back in his family that basically caused his grandfather's line and his great-uncle's line to basically go apart and not speak to one another until he was left the house in a will. And it turns out that it has to do with the book I just mentioned a little bit ago, that I guess his great-grandfather found the book, or got a copy of the book, and basically was starting this weird cult in the town of Jerusalem's Lot. Now, that's simplifying the plot a lot, but that's because I want you guys to actually go out and read it. It is a very interesting short story. I don't know if I put it in my favorite King short stories, because then again, I haven't read all of his short stories, but I tentatively say it'd probably make the bottom of the top 10. One thing that I find curious is that King calls his Necronomicon in this story the Book of the Worm. I just wonder if there's a personal reason why King went with that, or if he just went with that because he thought it'd be an interesting title to have as a Latin title for a book, and also the whole thing involving an Lovecraftian worm appearing in the last part of the story. Of course, you could tell it's a Necronomicon type book because of all the different languages that it mentions are in the book, like Celtic and some older ones, possibly Egyptian and Mesopotamian. Maybe even some Arabic in there too. And it's just the way that he described it, like, yep, that's a Necronomicon. And the way that they procure it, it's like, in America at the time, would people just be giving out books like this? Then again, when the guy who procures it, the source he gets it from says, after this, I don't want to do any business with you again. And like with Lovecraft's work, as the story progresses, you can tell from how the main character is writing, and of course when his buddy, the little brief times we see him writing in the story as well, that they're just getting more apprehensive, and the main character, he's starting to lose his mind. To add to this, King included a little snippet where it mentions 2 years prior when his wife died, he suffered a brain fever. So you could see why his cousin at the end kind of questions his sanity involving all that's going on. But of course, it also makes the narrator question his sanity a little bit as well, and also worries for himself, like, is this going to make my fever relapse? And of course, the resulting knowledge does make him go a little bit off the deep end. I'm going to not spoil why, but it fits in with the whole Lovecraft motif of knowledge driving you insane, especially if it's knowledge of the great old ones. Now, I don't know if the worm could be considered a great old one or just something lower on the pedestal that's one of their sub-minions or something. But it's one of those knowledge things that's like, we're really insignificant. And if you know anything about the Stephen King multiverse, it kind of works in that same manner, that humans in the grand scheme are insignificant, but it's not to the same degree as in Lovecraft's work. They actually can change things a little bit more. I mean, look at Stephen King's It. The children were basically minions, not minions, they were basically instruments through which Gon, the one in King's universe, destroyed it, or at least its physical form on Earth, depending on how you interpret its death in the book. And then, of course, you can also say Roland was you could also say Roland from the Dark Tower was an instrument of Gon because he stopped the Dark Tower from crumbling when he defeated the Crimson King and climbed the tower. Of course, the tower wasn't very forgiving, but that's for a whole other video. The main point with this is that the whole knowledge thing, definitely a Lovecraft influence, and definitely it's an interesting short story to read back to back with The Rats on the Wall. I don't think I will, but it's definitely one if you are a Lovecraft fan and a King fan. An interesting little homework assignment to do is to read them back to back. You definitely see the influence a lot more. And that's about it to say with this. It's a interesting read, fun little short story by Stephen King. If you don't really like ones that are written in letter format, you might not get into it, but if you could set that aside a little bit, I'm sure you'll have fun. Definitely one to be interesting to see them do as a short film, like if they did another Stephen King anthology film, would be interesting to see this as the opener, mainly because it's a period piece one, and we don't really see Stephen King do many period piece stories, you know, outside of like setting something in the 50s or something, but I'm talking more like antiquity period piece. Then you can't really count the whole gunslinger thing with that because that's more a fantasy period, which is a little bit different than setting something in the 1850s. And also, since you got some flashback scenes involving the Boone family in the past, you have a couple different periods you can visit with it. How fun!